thought, Russell, this film were to be looked at by our descendants, like a Dead Sea Scroll in 1,000 years' time, what would you think it's worth telling that generation?
Mind spins in spirals like the cogito. I think, therefore, but do I even know? Hume said the sun might not rise in the morning. Patterns ain't proof, just habits we adorn. Russell's teapot floating out in the void. Invisible doubts that can't be destroyed. Belief ain't a bird and the skeptic employs. Question the noise, the cosmos ploys. Skeptic's eyes always peeping the fraud. Truth ain't handed down, it's wrestled from the gods. Doubts my temple, my faith is flawed. Think it through twice before I applaud. Induction wobbles like a table with no leg. Hume's knife cuts leave certainty begging. A billion white swans, blood black renegade. Shatter the mirror, the cracks cascade. Cogito feels strong, but is it really? Thoughts build castles, clouds act silly. Russell's pot spins in the ether so freely. Prove it exists or the claim's too dreamy. Am I the dreamer or the dream in the show? The car wrestled devils, still didn't know. Faith and senses, they play tricks on a low. Truth's a mirage in a desert of woe.
When you are studying any matter or considering any philosophy, ask yourself only what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out. Never let yourself be diverted either by what you wish to believe or by what you think could have beneficent social effects if it were believed. But look only and solely at what are the facts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Skeptic Philosophy. I'm not sure what happened on that intro. I just noticed that some of the countdown was missing there. But hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. Today's guest we're having on is Felicia from Felicia by Nature. Her link is pinned in the description. Go check her out. But welcome.
Hi. Hello, everybody. It's good to see you. Hi, Robert. How are you?
Good. So you picked the subject of what was the fine-tuning argument. Right. And I'm curious, when you think of the fine-tuning argument, and I think we briefly discussed it, that there's a few different kind of fine-tuning arguments. And do you think this kind of applies to all fine-tuning arguments, that it's generally just a problem with the way of thinking, or what?
It's generally, my objections are generally based around the concept of fine-tuning as a whole. But the one I cobbled together here is a bit of a, I want to say, a steel man relative to the apologetics that's used, rather than the one that's necessarily like, well, the several that are on SEP, like the design using probabilities, things like that, because we could get into like all sorts of nonsensical little nitpicky details about the analytics of the philosophy and all that stuff, and it's just, for me, that is just like, can you just like make your case, dude?
Well, for the audience that don't know, we probably should give a little bit of an introduction to the, and I'll give the three fine-tuning arguments and see what you think about. Like these are the structures that I'm familiar with. I think the first one, the fine-tuning argument, we generally think of it as a planetary or local conditions. It kind of goes that the Earth seems uniquely suited for life, so it must be intentional. And this was kind of one of the older ones it's more localized. There's 19% error, or kind of arguments like this. That seems to be, suitable to life. And then when you get into the second fine-tuning, it's the fine-tuning initial conditions kind of argument, and it's the universe that began in an extremely special low entropy state. I think this one's one of the less common ones, that the conditions were perfectly correct for the universe to come into existence. And then probably the more common one that we now hear these days is that the fine-tuning of the physical constants is that had to be exactly the way that they are for the life that we know as life.
Yeah, the hair's edge argument.
Right. The hair's edge argument is better said. And I think that's a brief description of the three primary ones that we'll hear go about.
So I've got a syllogism that's a bit more leaning towards the hair's edge one, but it's because it's more towards the apologetic. So if you'll permit me, I'll try to. This is
Sure.
sort of like my attempt to steelman it because it's so messy.
Yeah.
But premise one: the universe has physical laws, constants, and initial conditions that fall within a life-permitting range. Premise two: the life-permitting range appears narrow relative to the broader range of conceivable or mathematically possible alternatives. Premise three: a life-permitting universe is more expected if reality is grounded in a purposive intelligence than if reality is indifferent, random, or brute. Premise four: when one hypothesis makes the observed data significantly less surprising than its rivals, that data counts as evidence for that hypothesis. Evidence in the philosophical sense, not the scientific.
Right.
Because I don't want to get in an argument with Joe Schmidt. In conclusion, therefore, the fine-tuning of the universe is evidence favoring a purposive intelligence behind, beneath, or prior to the universe. So this argument isn't proving God so much, and I don't think the hair's edge argument proves God anyway, without a whole bunch of metaphysical stacking that goes on top of it. But it does say that fine-tuning raises the probability of design. And I feel like that's probably the strongest steel man of the modern apologetic that I can come up with. And so even just from these premises, I'm not even going to nitpick these premises because I wrote them. So great. What straw man am I beating? But it's more like the problem with the fine-tuning argument at the end of the day, as a software engineer, that I see is you're not proving God necessarily. You're demonstrating very strong evidence for something like simulation theory, or and this is the way I like to put it, or a procedurally generated game like NetHack or Minecraft.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned that. That's an interesting one to get into.
It's really interesting because procedural generation or a bunch of algorithms that you take this random number or a set of random numbers, you plug it in, and you get predictable outputs. But they build rooms, they build worlds, continents, environmental biomes, things of that nature. And they're set algorithms that construct these worlds. Well, what do we see in reality? When we see a bunch of laws, we see a bunch of algorithms, if you'll excuse the metaphor, that are continually evolving, continually procedurally generating the next series of events that we see. The only real question is what's the seed number, the random seed, the initial conditions that were generated. So fine-tuning is really just saying, well, we have these algorithms that are finely tuned, and now the world is just being generated from the initial seed conditions. So for me, fine-tuning is less an argument for God and more an argument for something as solipsistic as a simulation theory. And I say solipsistic because simulation theory can't be proven or disproven, because if you prove simulation theory programmed in it for you to prove it, and if you can disprove it, then the simulation was programmed for
Sure, absolutely.
So it's silly, but that's not my only objection to fine-tuning. But fine-tuning is such a weirdly used argument because, like, you fundamentally have to misunderstand what scientific models are to even construct the modern apologetic of the fine-tuning argument. Because the fine-tuning argument with very much deep human hubris has to assume that science, when it comes to these constants and parameters, is done. There's no more further to go. We've taken our measurements. The science is settled. There's nothing more that can come from them. There's nothing else that can come from these things. The electron is 10 gigaelectron volts or however many it is. The force of gravity is the force of gravity. That is just a fact of nature grounded in the mind of God, or whatever the hell you want to think. And that's a real disservice to the scientific method. You can't just stop at something and say, that's it, and therefore it's finely tuned. Well, when we get to a point in science where we say that's it, we generally say that's probably it for our models, the way we model things. There may be something a little bit deeper that we haven't discovered or understood yet, but this is as far as our models take us, and this is as great as our models understand just yet. So, like, that's kind of like my second objection to fine tuning. Like you're putting the kibosh on the scientific process. You're putting your foot down and you're saying, no, damn it, no more science. It's God. And it's like, man, how can you say that? Like, why would you say that? How would you even prove that, you know? Oh man. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I did a lot of talking. Robert, you are muted.
I just realized that right before you said that. I just seen that. And the fine-tuning argument really doesn't get you to, even if it were correct and even if it were a solid argument, it still gets you to the philosopher's God, kind of, that there is this thing which creates.
Yeah, the Spinoza's God or something.
Right. It still says nothing of the character. It still says nothing of which one got it right or this, that, and the other. But I'm interested in the fine-tuning argument in terms of probability, because it seems like everybody makes claims about probability, and like everything at every scale seems impossible from the Big Bang. Let's say from the point of the Big Bang. If I'm saying my cup here has a particular atom that's here now in the front of me, what's the possibility of that, coming to be?
100%.
Right. Well, right. If determinism is the case, but
no, not even if determinism is the case. The fact that the atom is there right now means the probability is 100%.
Right. So everything that is, it's either impossible that it ever could have existed at all, or it's inevitable that it was going to be this exact way. It seems that there's nothing in between in terms of the philosophical approach to it. If we say that probability things exist at all, if we say like, what's the probability of this thing of cellular folding or whatever bringing life to the point that it is? All right. If that possibility is not distinct from the possibility of this atom being on this cup, it seems like we're just choosing an arbitrary thing and we're saying, oh, well, this is what we're concerned with. And in this case, we say life or life that's like us. What's the probability of that? And that to me seems philosophically indistinct from saying what's the probability of this atom being here in the front of me today.
That's so there's a couple of problems with my major problem with the fine-tuning argument from probability is that you don't have a defined probability space. You have a probability space of 1. So yeah. I mean, okay, cool. You can use metaphysics to sort of like weasel around that and go, well, maybe if that, well, maybe. But like, I mean, I live in this reality. Plus, you're also trying to make the art, and theists, theologians, philosophers of religion try to do this all the time. They try to center it around human life. Yeah. And what's the probability of human life coming about? But here's what's really interesting. You take the opossum, right? You take this stupid little marsupial, and this stupid little marsupial in one form or another has basically been around for 65 million years, almost unchanged in the North American opossum. You could take a modern opossum, throw him back in the Cretaceous era, and it'd probably be fine. It'd probably just fit in, right? So like, is life fine-tuned for human beings, or is life fine-tuned for crabs, lobsters, cockroaches, and opossums? Like we're not being honest here when we're even talking about probabilities. Like if the universe has life in it, which I think it does, but if the universe has extraterrestrial life in it, we're going to be so bored of it because it's going to be nothing but cockroaches, crabs, and opossums. Like it's all of these planets are just going to be these little things just running around, and we're going to be like, well, this is stupid.
I heard in an argument, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, but this kind of argument was going on in a larger stage, and it was like that if anything was slightly different, that we wouldn't have the life the way that it is. And the interlocutor asked if anything was slightly different, would the rings of Saturn be a little different than how they're composed right now? And the guy's like, well, yeah. He said, okay, well, then the aim of everything was to get the rings of Saturn exactly like they are in their exact composition, right? And this is not any more valid than, okay, the life that we have as we are, that this was the reason for it all to be in this composition.
Yeah, and it's like, assuming that life was assuming that this particular instantiation of whatever the hell we are was a target, it seems awfully cruel to me. Like, where is everybody? How do we reach anyone else? What's out there? What happens if we get hit by another asteroid? Like we're effed, right? So like it seems like a really cruel twist of fate to just strand us on this rock when 2, 3, 4 major extinction events have happened. I think 3, but like the probabilities of us getting nailed by an asteroid and going extinct again are not zero. The probability of Yellowstone exploding is not zero. Yellowstone explodes, game over, guys. Sorry. Go out to the car dealership and steal whatever cars you want because it's done. We done. Like, so like, it seems awfully cruel to say God fine-tuned the universe for this when this is crappy, man. There's a lot of bad things that could happen completely out of our control. And that raises an interesting question that it just came across my mind. Robert, let me ask you this. And this is unrelated to fine-tuning. We'll get back to fine-tuning in a second. I'm sorry. Is it morally responsible? Is it morally correct for human beings to escape planet Earth in the event of an annihilation event?
I don't know at that scale what morality
means.
Right. I don't even know what it means at that scale. In all honesty, self-preservation is just a thing that happens. We're talking about the selfish gene at this point. Morality is something that is given rise to kind of through the selfish gene and for selfish reasons. But self-preservation is preceding the moral construct, not a byproduct of, or it's a byproduct of. The moral construct is a byproduct of the selfish proposition. So it seems that in that case, it's just we have to survive.
Okay. Now, what does the theist say to that question? Because the Bible only says the apocalypse will come and y'all are effed. So
right.
Do you bend to God's will and just let everyone die, or do you build a rocket ship and get off the planet?
Right. Yeah, that's the Christopher Hitchens referred to this as that they'll see the silver lining in the apocalypse, right?
Yeah.
The world is going to end, and but hey, we're finally all going to go to see Jesus. That this is the good thing that we've all been waiting for. The will for the end of it all. I'm reminded of, if you've ever seen Waterworld. They have this old man that's down inside of the tanker that has lived down in there the whole time. And it's all flammable down there. And finally they drop this flare down inside of there. And as the flare is coming down before it hits the oil, the old man looks up and says, "Oh, thank God." And this is what I think of about Christianity kind of waiting for the end to come,
Yeah. Gosh. Could you imagine? Like, because it boggles my mind to think about the morals of Christianity when it comes to the end of times. Because, like, imagine all of the immense suffering and agony and infinite torture of so many people, and you're going to be happy about it. You're just going to be okay with it, and it's just like, I don't understand how that's moral.
Yeah, obviously.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Our external view, that's problematic. But when you can square things like saying to kill your children, because God commanded it, when you can square that with that is moral because God has said it, then clearly there's nothing that you can't square.
You can't square it. Yeah, I mean, you could circle any square at that point. It doesn't matter.
Right. Exactly.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get that far off track of fine tuning. It popped into my head, and I was like, this is a terrible road to be going down. I don't like this. But back on fine tuning, since that was the subject we wanted to talk about. So fine tuning is a thing in science, right? It's a thing we notice about our models. And when we notice fine tuning in our models, we go, there's something weird there. We shouldn't have to fine tune parameters. It tells us maybe something's incomplete. Maybe there's something deeper we can study. And so fine tuning in terms of scientific notation is just maybe possibly hinting at something else to explore. It's not a thing that says endpoint stamp God here, but used in apologetics, the term fine tuning, I feel like it smuggles in an equivocation. It's smuggling in intent with the phrase, because fine tuning when used in apologetics is not a neutral phrase. it implies fine tuning implies a tuner. It implies a precision. It implies adjustment and purpose because it's being
Yep.
used colloquially. And that's, but the actual observation is just, it's so much weaker. Like certain parameters appear to be life permitting within some range. I feel like calling it fine tuning is smuggling in the conclusion to the premise in terms
It
of how
is
apologetics
fine-tuned
works.
for. It seems like it's almost, and I've mentioned this before when we talk about like more right, or when people say that an act is right or an act is wrong.
Mhm.
Wrong in what sense? Or even when we say like moved, like there's no such thing as moved without saying relative to, like it moved relative to. So when you say fine-tuned, it's almost like it has this implied fine-tuned for this given outcome, like that it's conditioned in a way that it wanted this outcome, and that seems like you're definitely smuggling something in.
Yeah, and the thing about it is fine-tuned within the scientific realm, within the model realm, makes sense because we did a ton of experiments to figure out what the force of gravity was, what the net
Right.
effect of gravity was. We've done a ton of experiments to pin down what the speed of light is. That's fine-tuned, but by repeated experiments and observations, the number had been fine-tuned to fit into the models very well. But when presented in the apologetics framework, it's smuggling in its conclusion, and it's like, man, it'd be so much more honest if you called it like parameter sensitivity or something like that.
Yeah.
Like and here's the thing, it raises interesting questions about the scientific method, about how we come to these fine-tuned variables or constants. It raises really interesting questions about our processes, and philosophy of science has some really interesting, engaging discussions on what fine-tuning means for the scientific process. If you ever get a chance to read, oh, damn, it was right on the tip of my tongue. There was an article about fine-tuning within the method of as a result of the method of science, and that it's necessarily never going to be improved because of how we methodologically come to our understanding of things. But it was really, really interesting. Basically, fine-tuning is an emergent behavior of the scientific method. I'll have to find it again. It was a really good article. So yeah, there you go. I think fine-tuning is very weird. And here's what's really, really interesting about fine-tuning. You want to hear me on this one, Robert? And let's go down. Let's go down crazy lane for a second, shall we?
Right.
There's no symmetry break. You ever notice this? There's no symmetry break with fine-tuning. There's
In what sense? What do you mean?
Let's say that the apologist concludes God, fine-tuning, therefore God. There's no symmetry break between brute facts, God, Opal, the cosmic opossum that hissed us into existence in her drool,
Sure.
or Billy Bob Cosmic, who is a junior cosmic engineer who accidentally started the universe and is trying to hide it from his bosses, and therefore that's why there's such a dispersal and an inhospitable universe, so that they don't notice there's a ton of life out there.
So when you say symmetry break, I take it that you're meaning like, what is the counterpart to not fine-tuning? Is that what you
no,
mean?
it's what are the alternative hypotheses to God being the conclusion? So let's say fine-tuning's true. Let's just grant fine-tuning as a premise. I cannot tell the difference between God, brute facts, Opal the cosmic opossum, or Billy Bob cosmic junior cosmic engineer.
Right.
There's no way to tell the difference.
No distinction.
None whatsoever.
So let me hit you with something. I want to hit you with something and see what you thought about this in terms of the definitions. This is something that I wrote a while back about these two different rooms. They're like, imagine if you go into these two different rooms. These are completely white rooms, and these rooms are going to be analogous, obviously, to different possible universes. And one of the rooms that you go into, there is a white table, and there's a penny sitting on its edge that's just standing up on its edge. And now we're going to back out of this room, keep this room in this scenario, whether someone actually had put that penny on its edge intentionally. Now we step out of this room, and then we go into another room, and it looks like the bottom of the Goonies. I don't know if you remember the Goonies when they thought they found the treasure, but they were at the bottom of a wishing well, right?
Yeah.
There was all this change there, right? And inside of this room, there's millions of pennies laying everywhere, and one penny is standing up on its edge. Okay. And it seems to me that if we look at these two in terms of probability, the first one, if that's all there was, that there was just a penny standing on its edge, like any reasonable person would say that that had to have been put there by a person. They stood it on the edge because there's no other pennies standing there. Whereas, and hear me out, if we go into the room where there are millions of pennies and we find one that seems to be arbitrarily sitting on its edge, this seems like that this had no intentionality to it, that chance could have landed it on its edge. And these are two very different scenarios. So it seems when we start understanding our universe and we think that we're the only planet out here, it's akin to being the only penny on the table. So we say, of course, someone placed it that way. But when we start to see millions and millions of other planets, then it begins to look different. Obviously, it's a contrasting issue that now you have all these possibilities of probability playing a factor in it. What's your thoughts on this?
So you're hinting at multiverse and stuff like that. I'm going to take that in a different direction. I have flipped a penny and landed it on its edge. I haven't done it a lot, but I've done it a couple of times by pure coincidence. It just happened. How do I differentiate somebody doing that intentionally when I wasn't there to witness anything or see anything, and a cosmic idiot accidentally doing it? How do I tell the difference? So like just because the penny's on its edge doesn't mean some cosmic idiot didn't come around and just do it by mistake.
Sure.
But like it's like just seeing something different or weird or out of the expected normal range doesn't make it miraculous. And I think that's something that people tend to forget quite a bit. So I'll give you this example. My uncle, before I came out as trans, I confided in my uncle that I had a dream about my dead dad. He'd been dead about 10 years at that point, along with my dog. And my dad said very clearly in my mind, because I was petting my dog, and he said very clearly in my head, I heard him say, "He's waiting for you." And I was like, "Well, that's really weird. That's spooky." And my uncle called it a miracle. He said, "That's your father in heaven. He's just waiting for you to join him on the other side one day." And God forbid it's anytime soon, whatever. All that religious jazz. Now, a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's a miracle. You got to see heaven. You got to visit heaven." Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of that story you didn't hear. You only heard the words come out of my mouth about the dream I had, right?
Right.
You didn't hear the fact that my father was a lifelong atheist, that he disavowed heaven and hell. He disavowed Jesus, the concept of God. He thought it was all complete horseshit. So you didn't hear that part. So my dad being in heaven and being miraculously in heaven was really weird. And now I've heard one person tell me, "Well, you weren't there on his deathbed." Oh, yes, I was. I was there that night when he had his massive heart attack and died next to my mom in bed. No, he didn't reach out for Jesus. He died.
Yeah. This is a huge claim. There's whole books written on this, deathbed recantations. They had one of the biggest nonsenses that ever come down the pipe. I don't know who the apologist was, but they wrote a book called Voices from the Edge of Eternity. And it was just one claim after another that this person and that person had a deathbed recantation. And there was even claims, I'm not sure if it's in this book, but there was the claims that Abraham Lincoln, had a come to Jesus moment, which is absolutely ridiculous because he had a bullet in his head and his coherence was just, not there. There was nothing there, but there's so many of these that people make this claim, and they make it in the absence of people being nearby, and hoping that those people don't speak up. Anton Duvay, supposedly, many people have made the claim. I think it first started a lady pastor made the claim that Anton Duvay had a deathbed recantation, and that his daughter had clarified and said this is absolutely just not true, that she was there in the end and it's just nonsense.
Yeah, so what's really interesting about the deathbed confessionals is that, and I don't hear him brought up a lot in atheist circles that I'm in, the whole
No.
debate scene thing and all that nonsense. I don't hear him brought up a lot, but Logic actually did an excellent video just going through all of these supposed deathbed confessions of lifelong atheists and said, well, no, that's horseshit. No, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. It was a really actually one of his better videos. I really like that. So
An underrated guy, by the way, Logic. I do sub
Logic
to
is
him.
great.
Really good guy.
I know. I do want to apologize ahead of time because nobody brings him up, and I'm just like, oh, maybe he said something I don't know. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
But his videos seem to be really pretty okay. But that's, and there's another aspect of my story that nobody ever hears, and that was I was 400 pounds, and I was laying down on a bed that was sort of ill fit for me, and I had undiagnosed sleep apnea. So what's more likely, that I had a miraculous vision of my atheist father in Christian heaven, Catholic Christian heaven, by the way. We were Catholics before he disavowed everything, became atheist. So the Vatican, by the way, tells atheists, you're burning. Goodbye. So what's more likely? The fact that I had that miraculous vision where I saw my father and my dog for some reason, which is another thing that Catholics don't hold to, in heaven, and it was a beautiful scene in my head, and I'll never forget it. Or is it more likely that I was choking to death on my sleep apnea from being 400 pounds?
Yeah.
I think I was choking to death, guys. I think my brain was like, panic mode. Let's wake up, please.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing that a lot of people don't know about. In the Muslim faith, they have there's a verse that talks about seeing the Prophet Muhammad, that the devil cannot take the shape of the Prophet Muhammad, so that if you see a vision of Muhammad, know that it is from the Lord. So when people think that they have a dream of Muhammad, it's doctrinally, it can't be doctrine that's revealed. It's a message for you. But when they see Muhammad in their vision, like, this cannot be anything but this is God. That is
the devil can't. The devil can't take
the devil form, cannot take the form of the Prophet Muhammad.
But I can draw the Prophet Muhammad and get every Muslim angry at me.
I don't make the rules. Right? I didn't write the book.
Islam's weird, dude.
Islam's weird.
Well, Christianity's weird.
They're both weird, but in their own way. I just thought that was an interesting one. We're talking about dreams and revelations. That one's a slightly different aspect to that faith, because many people will make claims like, I saw Jesus or I saw that. And in the Christian religion, there's obviously one Christian makes the claim that I saw Jesus, and the other's like, okay, all right, sure. Especially if you appeared in a way that we don't agree with. But inside of the Muslim faith, like, it's more closed in, that was a message only for you. It's not a doctoral message, but that know for sure that it was true and it was the Prophet.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, enjoy, I guess. That's like when somebody tells me, well, I actually had a theist tell me that fine tuning for him was a personal revelation. That God personally revealed to him that God himself fine-tuned creation to harbor human life. And I said, well, if that's evidence for fine-tuning, then my personal non-revelation is equal evidence for lack of fine-tuning. So, now where are we? Like, we're sitting here talking to each other about numbers on worksheets in mathematics. And there's the other thing I don't get about the fine-tuning argument, and maybe somebody here could help me. I know Leo's in the chat as well, and so maybe he can maybe help me figure this out, because it seems to me, and Robert, you're pretty smart, Robert. So it seems to me the fine-tuning argument almost requires that the person making the argument be sort of like this mathematical Platonist. Like, reality itself is mathematical in nature.
Yeah, I don't know. There's different approaches. It really depends on which one of the three that they're approaching. I remember Aristotle, book 2, he writes in one of the chapters about purpose of things. I think it's in chapter 8. There we go. Book 2, chapter 8. He writes about the nature of things interacting, and he mentions the swallow and spiders webs, that they're all for an end, that he's kind of doing it's a very early version, it seems like, of I guess a fine-tuning argument, that it's all for a reason. Everything that is shaped in the way that it is, that it's all driven, that nature, the rain goes up and it comes down, that it might not be considering like the individual crops, but that it's all fine-tuned for a reason. He doesn't use obviously the term fine-tuning, but it seems
It happens
to have
for
that.
a reason.
Yeah.
This is kind of why I hate metaphysics, to be honest with you. Like, it's not fair to say I hate it. I hate metaphysics when it's applied to things that can no longer be applied to reality directly. When you start saying things like there's a reason behind it, there's a why behind it, and you start making arguments for the why, you've left a realm of understanding that I can test, that I can see. If you can demonstrate that there's a mind behind it all that has intentionality, and you can demonstrate what the intentionality is, cool. Let me see the demonstration. Don't just argue at me with metaphysics all day, because metaphysics to me is just like, I'm up here in this abstract cloud layer, right? And I've never come down to the layer where Felicia's on the toilet taking a crap in the morning. Well, talk to me while I'm on the toilet about the intention of reality. Talk to me about all of the nonsense I have to go through in my daily life. Don't talk to me about, oh well, it was fine tuned for life. What do you mean it was fine tuned for me to poop out the butt every morning? Really? That sucks. Why? Why did you do that?
Yeah. Well, it's obvious also that the fine-tuning argument is a very different argument than created with. Like, if you look at like these Genesis stories, like God individually created this planet and gave kind of rise to it. And that's very different than the fine-tuning argument that might glaze over billions of other planets exist, but that he conditioned the conditions to give rise to. So there's a very big contrast from like the philosophers kind of, God created the physical laws and the constances, then to get all the way to the Bible and be like, no, God spoke the world, our planet into existence, and the individual people. So these are two very, very distinct contrasts. So I don't know, even if you could say the fine-tuning is true, it seems like you're just miles and miles away from God said in the beginning, let there be light. Like that's just so infinitely away from one another. And like, if fine-tuning is the case that something was designed, if you think like a watchmaker or anything that was created, nothing has the level of waste that our universe does. Like there's, if we made a house, for instance, and we had, let's say 5% of our material was waste, cut off studs and whatnot that we had to throw inside of a garbage bin. Okay, so we have a 5% waste. That's kind of high for a design thing. But now if you're talking about 99.9999% waste, and we only really needed the one thing, then in what sense is this designed? You know, how do you even call it designed?
Well, I mean, so here's the other thing about the fine-tuning argument. Stephen Hawking said that or was it Stephen Hawking? It may have been somebody else. Ooh, all right, so don't quote me on this. I don't think it was actually Stephen Hawking. I think maybe it was someone else now. I'm screwing it up, but so please forgive me. But somebody once said, somebody prominent once said, if anything, the universe seems to be designed for black holes. And I almost agree with that.
I have heard this. It might be Hawkins, actually.
It might have been Hawkins. I'll
look it up while you're talking.
And so when it comes to like being designed for black holes, it makes me wonder, maybe there is a purpose to the universe existing and we're an accidental byproduct of it. Maybe the purpose of the universe is to extract energy from a Genesis engine. And that somehow outside of our observable universe, some ancient aliens detonated a Genesis bomb, and the dark energy we see is just the leftover remnants of the energy of the universe doing its work, and they're just extracting it somehow. And black holes are the inevitable endpoint of that. Like, if we're just going to talk metaphysics, and we're going to talk fantasy world sometimes with metaphysics, why are we throwing these options out and not considering them on par with another thing we can't observe? It's completely unobservable. It's ridiculous, but the thing is, it's the idea of an ancient alien species setting off a Genesis bomb to extract energy out of a new universe is equally as implausible to me as an atheist as the God hypothesis. You know, it drives me nuts sometimes to hear people just posit these things and just be like, well, God did it. Well, no, ancient aliens did it to extract energy. Now what? Now where are we?
Yeah. Well, and there's something that we've dodged around a little bit. But first of all, I wanted to say that was Stephen Hawkins. I did look it up. I'm not sure if it all posted in the side chat there, but I did post it over here on the side. But it was Stephen Hawkins that said it. Okay. So something that we haven't mentioned is if you're talking about a probability of a difference in the constances, because I think that's one of the bigger three. Let's say gravity was slightly different or some different aspect was slightly different. Even if we had some other matter that came into being, whether it's not quite like the construct of atoms or the building blocks, we have a slightly different building block. No matter what we have, when we have some kind of physical constants, anything that come to assimilate and replicate, that would be very different than what we call life. Mm-hmm. But that thing would still, it could still be sitting here with an almost religious perspective of, well, if the conditions were any different than what we are, you know, couldn't exist, right? So this is what seems so strange to me, that we don't know that life in some sense could have come about in any single possible change of these conditions that you could imagine. Like there might be different coalescing. If you're thinking of different like gravitational coalescence or whatnot, there could be different coalescing of bodies and forms and mass. Just like we might have snowflakes, for example. There's this fractal repeatedness in snowflakes that they're not designed per se, but the conditions give rise to these very asymmetric, apparent looking designs. And on other planets, maybe there are other, you know, things that are emergent or they look like designs that would arise on these other planets. And even if you changed all the conditions, you're likely going to get some kind of emergence. We just don't know what that emergence would be. But that thing, if you have life there, it would still be saying, well, yeah, if anything was any different than this, we wouldn't have our type of life.
Stephen Hawking, not Hawkins. Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to misspeak. I'm sorry. So, I mean, here's the deal. Like, what are we talking about when we say life? Do we mean life as simply a system that uses energy, obtains information to preserve itself, to replicate itself, to adapt, and reproduce across multiple generations? If that's life, then you can conceive life of, maybe not a human level life, but certainly you could conceive of life in an alternative universe where the parameters are different, and so this level of relational stability can't form, right? Like we can't form this level of stable, coherent matter. But I can't say I've never seen the demonstration. I've never seen any simulations that show otherwise, that some form of that definition of life couldn't exist. I don't think anyone's run exhaustive simulations on what could potentially form. I don't even know how you would do that. It'd be a hell of a simulation going on for that. So like I'm not sure. I'm not really sure why the leap from it's more of like a special pleading fallacy, almost like saying, well, human life necessarily in the way we understand it couldn't exist. And sure, fine, I'm okay with granting that. I'm here now. Like, I don't, what do you mean I couldn't? I may not exist in some hypothetical alternative. Like, are we making like this weird modal ontological argument about reality? Because great, I don't grant S5, so here we are. I don't know what to tell you, man. It's just so weird to me to hear these types of arguments, because I'm like, man, I exist here. I exist now, right? Could I have existed somewhere else? Well, you know what? If your God really was triomni and all powerful, yes, I could have. In fact, it would have been much more miraculous for me to be existent floating out in a void with a sun blaring down on me and everyone else just telepathically speaking to each other. Far more miraculous than what we have right now. Far more
Sure.
miraculous.
Sure. And this was brought up with B.S. Lewis when he was on for The Problem of Evil, that if God had complete control over the rules of, that there could have been a universe in which we don't stub our toe, right? That stubbing toes is not a possible thing, or any level of, I mentioned stubbing toes because there's two different contrasts of like, of pain and suffering. There's the pain and suffering that we might be able to say, okay, yeah, this happens for a reason because it adjusts us or makes changes to us. And then there's this seemingly arbitrary, no reason for this, such as stubbing your toe. You know, it's not doing anything particular. So if the conditions of the universe, of the laws of reality could have been changed, then this is the one that God would have had to selected from an infinite possibility of conditions that it could have been otherwise.
Well, and it also, so let me ask you this. Let's define this before we move any further. Does God exist in a physical reality or a metaphysical reality?
Well, most would say that he exists inside of a metaphysical reality. I think
Okay.
now is the common go-to.
So then,
Even Daniel Craig and them do that. I think.
so then, if he exists inside of a metaphysical reality, metaphysics, the argument must be that metaphysics is primary to physical reality.
Sure. Yep.
How the hell do you demonstrate that? Because I can demonstrate that
Okay.
metaphysics comes from the mind. I like metaphysics straight up just comes from humans arguing at each other and saying "what if" a lot. Like, so like how do you demonstrate that metaphysics is primary to physics?
It's weird when we talk about physical things. Like there's all of these different categories of physical things, whether we're talking about energy, whether we're talking about entropy, whether we're talking about mass and even any types of mass, whether we're talking about intelligent animals. Like all these are different categories that are inside of the physical. Whereas when people talk about like metaphysics, it's just a thing that is not physical. And what people try to couch inside of that category is that there are minds inside of that category, you know, not just things that are conceptual, like a priori or something, but that they try to put things that most people would create that category just to say, put things like a priori knowledge in. They'll create that category and say it's a non-physical thing. Maybe abstract things are non-physical, like shadows or the absence of something, that these are metaphysical conceptions. And then you have the category, and then they say, well, let's put everything else inside of that category also. Ghost, spirits, spiritual dragons, and all these, you know, they're now housed inside of this category. And like none of this can be demonstrated.
And it's just it's so weird. Like talking about metaphysics as primary to reality is just, it's so strange to me because metaphysics exists inside of reality, not external to it. You without human minds around, without minds to discuss this sort of stuff and categorize stuff and observe stuff, does metaphysics exist?
Yeah, there's was an argument on this with the a priori thing. Like the a priori proposition was in mathematics that no matter whether there was a physical universe or not, 1 + 1 would be 2. But then the pushback is like, would it? Would it though? Would, if there's no physical reality, in what sense would 1 + 1 still be 2? You know, we could now say that logically follows, but we couldn't say that logically follows if we have no demonstration of physical. Right? It's only because, and David Hume kind of argued this too. It's only because that we can kind of test it, and it has a that it comes to the conclusion that agrees with physical reality, that we say, oh, yep, that's right.
It's just because to make the fine tuning argument, metaphysics has to be primary to reality, or at least the argumentation is that the metaphysical, and it's just so weird to talk about the metaphysical because Leo in the chat has it right. Metaphysics is just the study of the foundations or fundamentals of concepts and entities and how they relate to the structure of the world. And it's a fantastic definition of metaphysics, but theologians, philosophers of religion, and apologists will talk about metaphysics as if it's this reified thing. You know, they talk about it as if it's this fantasy world that exists that's superimposed over the top of reality. And I struggle to understand how they've come to that conclusion or how they've come to that position, because they seem to argue from that position quite a bit. Frank Turek tends to argue from this position without ever realizing he does, because it's like 90% of his arguments rely on like reality being some sort of subset of metaphysics. It's weird. I've deep dived his content way too much sometimes, and I'm just like, man, your arguments are weird, dude. Have you ever like I always wanted to ask some of these apologists, I'm like, have you ever like reviewed your stuff and like really thought about what you're saying sometimes? Because I don't think some of them have. Like listening to like William Lane Craig absolutely listens to himself and reviews himself and lets himself be peer reviewed. That's very clear. Alvin Plantinga as well does the same thing. I'm not saying that they're like the best philosophers in the world. But they at least take serious criticism seriously. But then you got guys like J. Warner Wallace and Frank Turek and Cliff Connectley and all these other dudes who just, I swear they don't listen to themselves. I swear they just don't listen to themselves sometimes, and they don't think about the arguments they're making. It's so weird. Theological metaphysics is an interesting thing. Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. It's if you just like listen to them sometimes, like the fine-tuning argument makes a little more sense if you presuppose God, but the presupposition of God isn't something I hold to. So like, great. Yeah. Congratulations. You've presupposed a mind that did everything. And I'm over here like, but I see nothing but physical processes all the way down. What's to make like, so they want to make the probability argument about what's the probability of us existing in this state. Here's the thing. I've looked at everything is all physical all the way down. All the way back to the beginning of the Big Bang. It's all physical processes all the way. There's no metaphysical nonsense happening, no magic woo happening.
Well, that really depends on how you define metaphysical in that sense. Because we could say in some sense that quantum fields are non-physical, and if you're looking at metaphysical in terms of just that is beyond physical, then we can say in some sense that quantum fields are metaphysical. But I think many scientists don't want to use that term because that gets way too woo-woo.
Well, because it gets theological really fast. I'm speaking more in terms of theological metaphysics,
sure.
not the. We can argue relational quantum mechanics some other time. I love Carlo Rovelli and his work, but let's not get there. let's
sure.
But I think it's far more statistically likely that whatever started the Big Bang was physical, because everything else leading up to it is physical. So like we want to make this pointless, statistical probabilities argument. There you go. There's your pointless statistical probabilities argument, just in reverse. Now where are we? Again, the whole thing about fine tuning is such a silly argument. It's so silly. I don't necessarily hate it. It's been one of the more interesting things I've dove into in terms of apologetics. It's less interesting than, say, somebody just proclaiming on faith that God exists, because at least then there's something personal to talk about. Like, oh, hey, cool. Why do you think that? That's neat. What's up with you? Let's talk. But man, I think the only thing probably a little bit more annoying than fine tuning might be the Kalam. Kalam's nonsense. I hate nonsense.
Yeah.
Kalam. And then there's whatever the hell. Then there's my Discord is going nuts. Why is my Discord going nuts? I'm sorry.
I turn mine off when I do this.
I really should learn to because now I'm just hearing but up. I'm like, what is happening? What is going on?
Well, I tell you what I do when I run into people we're just going to have a short conversation on the subject of fine tuning. Yeah. I take some arbitrary objects, and I generally keep some kind of rocks or something on my desk, and I'll pick up a rock or something, and I'll say, that the whole universe was fine-tuned for this rock to exist. In what way can you prove me wrong? In what way can you say that everything didn't happen just for this rock to exist? And obviously there's no grounds in which you could refute that. But if you're making these, like, this thing did come to be, so therefore the conditions were, and just off of that, the conditions were fine-tuned for that thing to be, then there's no arbitrary thing that you can't pick up and say the exact same thing about. You don't have to pick life. You can pick a rock and say, well, obviously everything happened. Obviously everything happened just for this rock to exist.
Yeah, and that's that's really funny because J. Warner Wallace makes basically the same argument in his fine-tuning presentation, and it's such a, if you want to listen to probably the second worst apologetic to use fine-tuning, it's the J. Warner Wallace approach to fine-tuning arguments, because the cold case Christianity guy tries to do the cold case detective act with fine-tuning, and you're just like, nah, bro. You can't be serious right now, really? Like, really? Because his entire metaphor is, well, I saw an open window and this woman was murdered in the house. It's therefore pretty reasonable for me to conclude the murderer entered through the window. Okay, cool. What does that have to do with the Big Bang? He never bridges that gap ever. And it's like, I've listened to Matt Powell give the fine-tuning argument, and it's just slightly worse. And it's like, man, JW, you know, how do you try to, why do you try to reflect everything through the cold case Christianity lens, especially fine-tuning of all things? Like, what does being a homicide detective have to do with physics? I'm confused.
Yeah. What's funny, and I don't know if you've heard this was an old comedy bit from what's his name? Earth Plus Plastic. He did. If anybody knows the name, the gentleman, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. He's one of the earlier atheist comics, but he did Earth Plus Plastic. George Carlin. And, yeah. Right, and he did that. Maybe that's the answer to it all, to why we're here.
Earth just wanted plastic.
Earth just wanted plastic, and it couldn't create it itself. Needed humans. So as that kind of end result thing, that we might not be the end result, but we might be a product, something that is getting towards the end result. Like we talk about all these different physical constructs and whatnot that give rise to, maybe we're just a physical construct that needed to give rise to an end result. So maybe it's all for plastic.
I think it's I think reality is much more vast, and if there is an end result, it's far beyond our comprehension, because everything we see is not geared towards end results. Everything we see is geared towards geared towards black holes, essentially, or empty space, right? So like our viewpoint is so narrow, and it's so limited in time, and it's so limited in the light horizon, that we can't really say much in terms of what it all means. It's just, here's where we are, here's our little fart of space. And the way I see things is, fundamentally, we're made of, like, quantum particles, right? Like, if you break us all down, like, let's get past the neurons, get past the cells, go down even further. We've got quarks and leptons and electrons and all this sorts of crap running through us that make us, that make up us, right? We're not part of the universe. We're made of the universe. And we'll be here for a short while. We'll explore around. We'll fart around for a little bit. And then we're going to be gone. And it's not going to matter. So, like, why argue for the fine-tuning argument? Pretty much, unless you are a creationist, in fact, every Christian believes this, we're not going to be here one day. The world's going to end. We're going to F off to heaven or hell. Like, that's what's going to happen. So, like, what?
It's weird, actually, to even think about the end results when we're, like, everything that we can tell about the universe is, like, it started millions and millions of years before us. And the best we can tell, it's going to keep on going billions of years after us. Trillions, so in our narrow little time frame, we're talking about the end results. Like, we're talking about, like, what it was all for. And when we're only existing, it's like a fruit fly that lives for a day or something, talking about, like, why universities were built. What the hell are you talking? Like, you're just passing through in a very short, narrow window. So when we're talking about end results, it just seems this is incomprehensible to me.
Yeah, I just think I think discussing end results, I think discussing initial conditions right now is still, it's a worthwhile scientific pursuit, but to argue from initial conditions like fine tuning requires is a bit problematic. It's a bit of an anti-science stance. It requires you to basically, and I'll go back to saying this requires you to be basically anti-science. It requires you to really put a stop and say, no, we stop here. God stops all of science here.
Yeah.
And I do remember, Scott, don't forget Ray Comfort's contribution to fine tuning, the Banana Man. Um, the only way Ray Comfort could have made that even worse for himself is if he deep throated the banana. That's the only way. Like, he's so homophobic too, and I'm just sitting there. I'm just
Yeah.
like, that's a penis, Ray. That's a penis in your hand. Why? How do you not see that? That's a Ray. Ray, take the damn it, Ray.
Right. We're gonna do open Q&A now. We'll bring a few people on here. We have Mike already on the backstage. We're gonna bring a few people in. I did want to mention I was having this conversation about the banana and Ray Comfort just the other day, and it was pointed out also that the shape of the butt is also very similar to the banana. Maybe that's what the banana was designed for. It
Chocolate
does fit pretty
starfish.
well. Right. All right. That said, let's bring Mike in here from Answers in Atheism. Mike, how's it going, man?
Mike.
Open
Okay.
chat, by the way, everyone. You are welcome to pop in. If I know you, I'll keep you on the stage. If we get more crowded, if we got room, I'll bring people in that I don't know. But pop on in.
Is my audio working, Robert?
It is working fantastic. I see your colored pins and all.
Oh,
You might have the camera aiming the wrong way.
That's not me.
Oh, I thought he was going to give us a demonstration. I was like, oh, sweet.
Oh, he's going to draw for us.
Oh, I can get my drawing board if we need to, particularly for the metaphysics thing. Because
oh, I'm so sorry.
This was wonderful to listen to. The fine tuning argument drives me nuts because I don't understand what they're talking about. It's like, what do you mean? It's like I use an example, like, okay, if you had a crystal of a particular shape, right? And then we came along and we measured all of the angles and we said, oh, those angles are just fine tuned to be that shape of crystal. Like, if any of these constants were any different, I don't think carbon atoms would even work. I think it's all interrelated in one big, huge structure that is our physical universe. And it's like, it's like I'm fine-tuned to be here right now because of all the millions of things that happened from when I got up this morning that brought me here, right? And the probability of me being here is 1. You know,
it's all relational, man. It's all a relation.
Yeah, you had relational atheism. I saw a video on your. I subscribed to your channel with both my.
I'm gonna bring Kurt in here too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So for me, everything's sort of relational. If you have just so let me ask you guys a hypothetical question. If you have just a single electron zipping around in nothingness in a quantum field, just one electron, do you have a universe?
In some sense.
Well,
I mean, it depends. It really just depends on the arbitrary word. Now,
yeah, right. Depends on your definition of what universe is.
Yeah.
But to me, I don't even know if you have time at that point either. I think because do quantum particles have a time property? I don't think they do. You know, you don't have time until another particle smacks into it. And now you have an event.
Right.
So,
then you have an event.
If you just had if you didn't have that space-time continuum plus all the different particles in it, you would have like nothing. I mean, it's hard to imagine what it would be, right? Or it's hard to imagine like what would the space-time continuum be with no particles at all.
Yeah,
there'd be nothing for them to relate to.
Like
I did a simulation once in Ruby where I was creating very, very simple little, you could call them animals, but they weren't really animals. They were just two-dimensional beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was going through this whole thing. I had to create, a coordinate system with space-time, that sort of thing. And then I asked myself, well, if I have two of these little units, electrons, well, let's call them electrons, right? And they're a certain distance apart. Now, what if distance was the property of those two things taken together? That it wasn't really, a stretched out distance, that it was actually a property that they projected onto the space-time. so that every particle in it sort of projected its own relation to everything else, and that became space-time. And that, and it occurred to me that there are different ways to look at all of this. But that, by the way, you guys were talking about metaphysics, and there are two kinds of metaphysics. One I call junior high metaphysics, or naive metaphysics, with what if we're a brain in a vat, or what if this, what if that, right? Real metaphysics, if you look at a metaphysics textbook, is about something far different than that. You know, it's about like what particles are, how objects relate, and all of that stuff.
Well, there's the third kind of metaphysics is the apologetics metaphysics.
Oh, that one, yes.
Fair enough.
Way
Point
out
of order,
there.
y'all. Though I want to introduce some new people's coming in. Kurt and Scott. How's it going now?
Kurt and Scott.
Hey, it's going great. I'm glad we're having this topic discussed. I have a question for the panel once things settle down from the previous topic.
Go ahead.
Doing
It's
great.
settled now.
Okay, and this has to do with what apologists do. Okay, I've had a guy in our side chat one time on one of our snadas, I think, Saturday night at the Atheist, every Saturday at 4 p.m. Central Time. Be there or be square. But at any rate, they proposed a like a Bayesian calculation, and then the particular constant of 1 times 10 to the whatever. And my question is, in your various readings and discussions with Christians and apologists, are they envisioning that God just kept popping out universes like a roll of a dice with randomly one after another until a universe developed, and lo and behold, it had to, or do they think God just created the universe once and it had these particular constants there? What are they envisioning for a God where fine-tuning even means anything?
So when it comes to apologetics, they very much, especially the evangelical Christian apologetics, you'll get some different apologetics with different theologies, but for the evangelical Christian, they are 100% positing a single universe with a single human race on the single planet Earth and nothing else, because they need human exceptionalism to be part of their theology. Otherwise, the personal loving God makes no damn sense.
Let me push back on that right quick. Hold on, y'all.
Okay,
I was having this conversation over on Pangburn the other day, and we were talking about what's this planet that's got or it's a moon with the ice that we're wanting to check to see if there might be any side of
Europa?
life. Europa. There you go.
Europa and the Pirate Twins, a great song.
Right. So
Thomas
if Europa winds up discovering that there is some kind of life, what will be the new which it'll be absolutely earth-shattering in scientific discovery in everything. But the real question is, what will be the pivot that will be made from theists about it? Because now we have life on another planet. Will it all just be couched in denial? Oh, the NASA's lying, NASA's doing this. And you're going to have some of that, but you'll also have some of, yes, well, God made life. There are other gardens, right? There are other gardens of
proof of fine tuning is what it is.
Right.
Well, I can tell you exactly what they'll say. Well, it's not human life. It's not.
It's not human life. They're not conscious. They don't have a soul. Yeah.
Robin,
it's Robin.
Robin.
Oh, it was Robin. No longer is.
So my reply is that, well, of course, we live in a universe with certain constants that are quote unquote fine-tuned for us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here to talk about fine-tuning.
Yeah.
Observer bias. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a pointless. Or you could say that, in a cyclical universe where the universe collapses back into a singularity, or some other model, and Big Bang happens over and over and over again. We just happen to get lucky. Yeah. Improbable things can still happen. Rare things happen all the time. And their only response is, yeah, but this is really, 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 really. You just add another really to your description of how improbable it is. A bit tiresome.
I just I get kind of tired of the typical counters to fine tuning, and to the typical counters to all the counter apologetics, because I don't necessarily find them bad. I don't necessarily find them unintelligent. I just kind of try to find different approaches to answering them, because I mean the procedural generation counter that I have is just saying, well, you're just pointing towards simulation theory, right? But I'm sending it in a different way, because I feel like it just gets so stale to listen to the same damn thing over and over again. I'm just like, there's got to be something I can do to spice this up.
Right.
Yeah, in the 80s and 90s, there was like a baseball announcer who, when anything amazing would happen, he always say, "How about that?" And really, that is the fine tuning argument, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, look at this thing, and then what? What's the argument? Like, yeah, someone hit a baseball really far.
Suppose you had a guy that wanted to prove that he was the ultimate supreme being. He was the ultimate man in the entire universe, right? And he could come up with all of these little gotcha things about, where he lives or how tall he was, that he was perfectly fine-tuned to be the ultimate man and all of that. And that's what they're doing. They keep coming up with these. They can't show us their God, so they got to prove their God with these little games, that they come up with. Like the guy that really drives me nuts is Plantinga.
Alvin Plantinga.
Yeah, he drives me crazy with his grasp of evolution. His argument is so shitty.
Oh well, no,
he's everywhere.
So I'm going to push. I want to push back on that. So the EAN, the evolutionary argument against naturalism, is misused in apologetics quite a bit, especially by the Discord bro apologetics, because they push back against the methodological naturalism with EAN, and they're screwing it up so bad because. Even Plantinga has said EAN is not about attacking methodological naturalism. It's a rebuttal towards philosophical naturalism.
Yeah.
So it's a completely different. It's a completely different framework that he's attacking. Well, I mean, not completely different, but different enough. And so, like when you approach methodological naturalism with the EAN, you're doing it all wrong, because you could just say, yeah, we're not tracking for perfect truth. We're tracking to not effing die, guy. What do you want?
Can I fairly
Lewis down here? Yeah,
B.S. Lewis's comment. I wanted to say, can I fairly say for the panel that no one here thinks, in the strictest sense, that something come from nothing?
I'm going to push back on that.
Okay, all right. Let's hear it.
All right. So, B.S. Lewis, why does the panel believe something came from nothing? Here's the deal. And here's the really, really cool deal. This is a natural entailment of the argument you have imposed upon me, and therefore, and I would say you, I mean obviously loosely the theist. This is a natural entailment by your imposition that there is either God created something or I believe in something from nothing. The natural entailment is that I must believe that something came from nothing. If that is my position, then I'm fine with that position, because I see no evidence of a God doing it. It just means something really weird happened, and I don't understand the properties of nothing.
I think they believe that.
Is having fun. That's not. He's not like.
I know. No,
B.S. Lewis believe that. The theists believe God came from nothing, and then He created all of this from nothing. And so,
I mean, well, what do you mean by nothing?
Well, I mean, like, where did God come from? They have no idea. He's just always been there. Like, been where? That's why it's been there.
I mean, it's like, it just, all it means is if you were imposing that I must hold that something came from nothing, all that means is that I just don't understand what nothing is.
Right.
That's all it's saying.
Be complicated.
It seems like also, if there is a true philosophical nothing, then there's nothing in place to stop something coming from nothing. There's no rule. There's no principle. It's just we are applying our own biases about this universe to the idea of nothing, which we really don't have an idea about anyway.
I would mean that nothing was more interesting than we thought. Than we had
that is one of my new favorite quotes from you, Scott. There is nothing in place that says something can't come from nothing. Okay.
That's actually, I think, a Richard Carrier principle. I kind of boiled that down to a bumper sticker after reading Richard Carrier's blogs about nothing. I don't really take it that seriously because, you know, there's nothing that says that the universe isn't eternal anyway. You have to add on God as just kind of a, you know, kind of like the, what's that spray that they try to sell you at the car dealership to prevent rusting on the undertow, on the undercarriage?
I live in the South. I don't know.
Oh, that True Coat. They put that on at the factory, you know.
That True Coat. Yeah, you know, they, that's just kind of the useless addition that we don't need to do science or to understand reality.
Hey, Scott.
Okay.
I live in the South and we don't salt our roads here. So what we sell here is nothing. I've never even heard of this before.
Yeah, we don't have to put that crap on our bottom of our
Yeah, I don't know where I heard that from, but I always,
You don't salt your roads, you heathens. You heathens.
It doesn't snow. Why the hell would we salt them?
Heathens. Snow in Louisiana. Yeah. Kurt, are you the one that said that the other day? And because I think I remember you being the one that said it. And the more I've thought about it, the more I agree with what you said. That every argument for God is special pleading. Aren't you the one that said that?
It was me,
I might have said it, but it's.
I think that was me, Robin. I think we were a part of the conversation.
Sorry, I attributed it to the wrong person.
That everything is a special pleading argument. That God is an exception to every rule or standard of operation. Whether you're talking about what is it, the PSR or anything, like it all grounds out with, but God's an exception to that. Every single argument about causation, like God is an exception to it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I'm sorry. I attributed that to Kurt instead of you, but I've since I heard you say that, I have sat and thought about trying to find a way, an argument that violates what you're saying, and I haven't been able to come up with one yet. Really, I think they pretty much all are special pleading in some sort of sense of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the deeper problem is, of course, that the fine-tuning argument assumes it knows divine psychology. That's the weirdest part, right? You have this perfect being who is complete and needs nothing, and is made of nothing, and exists. Why did he make things? And if your answer is because he has narcissistic personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, like that's weird, right? How is he perfect?
Yeah.
Oh, what is the formal name of that objection to God, to the triomni God? There's actually a formal name to that. Oh, it's gonna kill me if I can't think of it.
I'm not sure of its formal name, but it is.
But it's
why the hell does he need worship? Argument for me.
Why does the perfect being need to create it all? What is the perfect being? It's the problem of divine motivation, I think it is. What motivates the perfect being to do anything?
Yeah.
And I don't.
And how can a human know the psychology of the divine being to be certain that they're correct about that assumption, right? That's the deeper question.
And that's when Christians start to retreat into the Bible, my Bible, because the Bible tells me so.
Oh God! Such a bad place to go, into the Bible.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with someone. What was it, 3 or 4 days ago? But I think you guys are all familiar with Harry Frankfurt, the philosopher's argument from bullshit. Like, there's 3 things you can have about a statement. It can either be true because you know the truth and you're saying what you think is true. It can be a lie because you know the truth and you're telling someone the opposite to fool them. Or it can be bullshit, where you don't know the truth and you don't care whether what you're saying is true or not. You're just trying to compel behavior and perform confidence. And they may all be special pleading, but they're also all bullshit.
Agreed.
I'll say this about arguments for the existence of God. They're all nonsense, and unless you are untrained, which is why a lot of these are deployed against like college kids on campus by like Cliff Knechtly and people like that. Unless you don't have experience with this sort of stuff, they're not effective in converting anybody, but they are effective in restoring faith in people who may have a little bit of a hitch in their faith. I think that's kind of where the effectiveness in apologetics lies, and that to me is kind of like the saddest thing, because it feels like it feels like the cult abusing cult members, where it's saying, believe because here's all these thousands of reasons. If you can't counter him, you're not allowed to stop believing. And it's just, that's what really feels wrong to me about apologetics. It feels abusive in that sense.
Yeah. Do any of you follow CJ Cornthwaite's channel?
I have seen him pop up a few times. I don't regularly watch him, but I really need to, because he does. He
put out a video on Friday that he obviously thought a lot about it, and his thesis in the video was apologists make their living lying to children.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that video.
Hey, point of order. Just someone tried to come in a moment ago, and it's not even showing you on my list. I only have 6 in here. One day I need to go ahead and pay for the damn restream and open it up. But I think 6 on the stage is already a lot. Well, that's up to you. I don't see it anymore. Who was even there? It just popped up for a moment. So that's totally up to you, Robin.
If you need me to bounce, let me know.
Nah. Yeah, I don't know who the person is, so unless they announce that they want to come on, I'm not. I don't want to let go of people that I do know for people that I don't know who's coming in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just quote that. Yes, Leo, for the Bible tells me so.
Yeah, I loved Ryan Murphy's comment earlier. Ryan Murphy said, "If it's." My question is, where is it at? Is that if there's fine tuning, why am I wearing pants?
Well, it could, because you're fine-tuned for keeping your employment.
Because your kilt was dirty, Ryan. Because your kilt was dirty.
My waist is no longer fine-tuned to hold my pants up.
That'll happen.
Yep.
You lost a lot of weight, or?
And my belly gets bigger and my waist gets smaller. The older you get, the worse that is. It's like, what the hell?
I was trying to be kind, Mike. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Doesn't work with me. Don't try that.
Fine. You're fine. You could be old, crotchety, and miserable over there. I'll be over here.
Getting back to CJ Cornthwaite, he has a lot of good, thoughtful things about apologists, about the text of the Bible, about like old New Testament Greek manuscripts and stuff. So people should definitely give him a listen.
Yeah.
I have a problem in terms of my involvement in the atheist community, and that is, I studied the Bible 20 plus years ago on my way to almost entering seminary. And I haven't really touched it ever since. I've never really cared to touch it ever since. And so when people start going off about, what it says in the Greek and what this actually means and what this argument actually means, I just sort of sit back and go, do you guys know it's a storybook, right?
Yeah. Like, I don't care. I don't care.
I think you two are missing the point, and I'm gonna back in on this. It'll give me the backup on this, hopefully, if he's still in there. All right. So here's the point. I was in a very similar place, and I got into seminary. And maybe there's like this teeter place that once you get into seminary and you go for a year or whatnot, that you will. Then when you leave the church, maybe you fall more into it. I don't know. I still read the Bible all the time. I still study the Bible all the time. Ed, I don't know how much still messes with it, but I think he still probably reads it a fair amount. But the thing is, when you're talking about deconversion, where people are at in their head, like everything that we're saying here doesn't mean as much to them as them seeing a mistake or seeing something that wasn't there, like the Johannine comma, for example, that wasn't in any text before 1550, right? When we're talking about the Trinitarian doctrine, when people begin to see this and they're seeing problems with their Bible, you have to let go of one anchor before you can grab another anchor. And when you let go of this univocality and this non-contradictory and this, we have all the exact answers, you can't grab a hold of science. You can't grab a hold of other philosophical understandings until you let go of this. And you guys stand a way less chance than prying their hands loose than somebody who knows the Bible and can articulate in a way that here's the problem with this. And this is why it's not univocal.
Oh, so I just want to say, I'm not saying it's not useful. I'm not saying it's not needed, not necessary. But for somebody like me, when people because a lot of times people in the atheist community will start making jokes about the Bible and about verses in the Bible, and I'm sitting there, I'm just like, okay, what are you talking to me about this for?
Well,
I don't care.
If you don't have an interest in the ancient Near East, in history, or like some people, they like Homer. They like to study Homer and the Homeric material, and more power to them. But I don't regret not studying Homer. I mean, sometimes I do. So I wish I knew more about that. I wish I knew more about Greek mythology and how it affected ancient Greek society. But that's my interest. That's my curiosity. If you don't have that, no big deal. And that's the way it should be with the Bible.
I mean,
you
to
don't
be
have
fair,
that.
The crazy thing is, here we are in the 21st century, and there are like what, 1 billion plus people or billions of people that believe in this stuff yet. Why in the hell is that? I mean, with technology and science, what it is, I just do not understand how there's still this massive belief in this stuff, and it kind of drives me nuts. And then I watched a few documentaries about cults and some of the stuff that, the aberrant stuff that some of them believe in. And it's like, God, are we that screwed up that we'll believe anything? I mean, it's like,
yes,
is that the human condition?
yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah,
the reason,
it is.
the reason
It
the
is.
Bible
We make affinity fixations, and then we get stuck on them, and we let them control our lives with our affinities.
It's
Yes,
crazy.
I'm gonna agree with Trusty Ape right here. The Odyssey definitely is. Actually, I prefer it to the Bible any day of the week. Actually.
Cyclops beats the hell out of the Nephilim.
I thought you were going to say Cyclops beats the hell out of Wolverine. I was just like, yeah, man.
I don't think Cyclops was in the Odyssey. It was in the Iliad, wasn't it? The Iliad.
Oh, okay. Well,
the Odyssey
I'm
is
just a barbarian.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
when
Odysseus.
outsiders from Greece learn Greek, I mean, they learn Greek on these types of stories. It's obvious when you see like something like First Clement, for example, he mentions the phoenix as some kind of sign of Christianity and the rise of Christianity. He talks about the phoenix as if it is a real thing. He knows that it's a mythical kind of proposition and that many people don't believe it, but he talks about the phoenix as if the phoenix is a real thing and that it's symbolic of kind of the rise of Christianity. So people that are in that time are being affected by that, those kind of stories, whether it's about the phoenix or whether it's about anything else. They're definitely reading the Iliad and the Odyssey and stuff and other literature in the Greek culture that is affecting them. That's for sure. That's how they're cutting their teeth and learning Greek.
Yeah.
I'm gonna step down, Robert, so somebody else can come on. Okay. So
all right, Robin, thanks. Yep, take care.
It's sad to me today to see firsthand biblical indoctrination in children at a very early age. I see it happening in some kids that are very close to me that I always talk about.
Yeah, me too.
And at one point, I had one of my grandsons come up to me and say something about Daniel and being in the furnace, and it said and Jesus was there with him or something like that. I said, well, the Bible just says one like the Son of Man. One like a son of man doesn't really say Jesus. And he stopped and looked at me like he couldn't believe I was contradicting what his teachers told him. Yeah. And he's getting that Christian indoctrination in there too, because Daniel doesn't say Jesus. Daniel says one like a son of man, and there's a big difference. And they're not going to get Dan McClellan's take on that, on what a son of man is or something like that. So it's just kind of disheartening at times.
Yeah, I have great nieces and nephews that are being totally indoctrinated by AIG, and they actually go out to the conferences and everything, and they bend to the ark, and it just breaks my heart to see those little kids with absolutely, I mean, they're being homeschooled, and they have absolutely no way to see outside of this thing, and it's crazy. One of them found out my sister was an atheist, and she started crying. I mean, she was crying, like bawling, because she thought her grandma was going to go to hell. Or her
sister.
Yeah. Aunt, I think. My sister. Anyway. I think it was a great aunt. I'm not sure. I can't. Yeah, great aunt. It would have been a great aunt. But she thought she was going to hell, so she was crying.
And that's where I find the most use in being able to understand the Bible. The problem is all my brain bandwidth has gone to computer stuff, and so when people start talking to me about the Bible, I'm just like, hey, do you know what you sound like to me? You sound like this to me. You see this? I wrote a thing called Flipper Hack for the Flipper Zero, and it's streaming this image off an SD card directly to the screen, and then I could give you all of the details of how that's happening. I can give you every last little detail about how I wrote this in assembly and all that. And I'm just like, it's so hard to relate these passions to people that we need to step back, I think, as human beings, not as atheists, not as theists, but as human beings. And we need to step back from our passions and talk to each other more as human beings. And I think, unfortunately, the important part about knowing the Bible and being able to talk to these people who live and breathe the Bible and think it is reality, and I think that's really important. But I also think being able to speak to them as a human being and being like, hey, listen, I know you feel bad about this, right? But she's happy right now. Shouldn't you be at least a little bit happy for her too?
Yeah.
Couldn't you have have an actual honest human conversation rather than like a biblical conversation sometimes? And I think that helps move them away from the emotional trauma that they're experiencing at the moment. And then it moves them to like a little bit better of a place. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But like, and that's when you can get them in the headspace and be like, oh, hey, listen, by the way, this Bible thing, right? Can we talk about this? Because I feel like we lose that human aspect to all we do. Goodbye, Robert. It's been fun. I'll miss you. I'll miss you, Robert.
Yeah, we're gonna miss him. Yeah. He's in control. So, is anybody familiar with? Is it Britt Hartley, Scott? The
spirituality one.
Yeah, the spiritual atheism thing going on, and she had a little dust up with Matt Dillahunty, and there's this thing that basically what she's trying to do is take back all of this humanity, like human emotions and the importance, how even myths are important to human beings, and there's all of this there's this rich emotional subtext to humanity, right? That we kind of want to take back for the secular community, right? And with the understanding that there's no spiritual bullshit going on, right?
Yeah.
But there's so much of that spirituality and that feeling that you get when you walk into a big church and everybody's, you got the choir awing and oohing and all that stuff. I mean, something happens to us as human animals that is really important. And we don't want to miss that as atheists, because if we do, we have no olive branch. We have nothing to hand to them, right? We have no meaning to hand to our youth if all we have is the universe is meaningless. We have to take back this idea of human meaning and what meaning is to human beings, and make that more powerful in our atheism, right? Rather than Matt Dillahunty, spirit bullshit. He just dismisses it, right? Anyway, I really like her, and I think everybody should check her out and listen to her. She's something else. So
a thing is an isolation of a set. I don't know why he mentioned this question earlier. I thought it was kind of a joke, so now he said it again. So it's just an isolation of this. Yeah, a thing is just like an isolation of anything. You can.
So I mean, like for me,
this is a thing that's isolated. This is not that thing. This thing and that thing is a separate thing. So anything that's isolated as
that's metaphysics. That's metaphysics.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I can say, because like the relational atheism thing I do, a thing is just a stable pattern that we can pick out and refer to and interact with across time. That's it.
It's basically the most generic noun you can use. Other generic nouns are stuff. If you want to be really generic, go, things and stuff. You know,
Right. What's weird is when you get into the abstract thing, it's more difficult to define this thing from that thing. So if you're talking about a shadow, for example, of a thing, you could say the shadow is a thing. And if me and you are standing next to one another, is your shadow and my shadow, and they blend together? Is this a different thing than that thing, right? Or are they just collectively the same thing as a shadow? You know, and this is just, it's a terminology thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a distinguishable pattern or a
Yeah.
system with enough stability to it that we can recognize as a coherent thing, a coherent unit. Sorry, I use thing in my definition of thing.
I think I want to talk to you about this relational atheism thing. I think it relates to my relational ideas of consciousness, and basically relate. I don't know. I'm trying to do this thing, and I think you saw it before of naturalizing epistemology. And
so I can give you my account of
every time everybody says the word thing.
I can give you my account of consciousness. It's really simple. Consciousness is the relational network of neurons in my brain firing.
Okay, I would go further. For me, it's the relational network of me as an organism, which obviously includes my brain and the entire local world around me, which right now encompasses about 50 feet of distance. And that entire thing is my mind. I always like the Pixies, Where's My Mind, playing in the background. But my mind is not in my head. It's not in my body. It's in this little sphere around me.
So I get what you're saying. For me, I'd push back and I would say my mind is just a category, a concept of all of the complex things my brain does, including the higher level functions. And then I would not necessarily say everything around me, you, anyone else I'm speaking to, or anything I do is part of my mind. It's part of a feedback system that develops what I call my mind. That's what I would say. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm just saying that's just how I view things. And whatever. It's such a, it is. It's
so closely integrated across time. For one thing, you can't be conscious in an instant. You have to be conscious in a swath of time.
Yep.
That's just the way the brain works, right?
Which is another interesting thing about God. How is God a mind if he's timeless? Because being a mind requires.
How does he think? How does he think if there's no sequence of events? Right.
A non-temporal thought, as if that is the thing that exists.
Well, you got to ask the Christians, what exactly was happening in God's mind when he noticed that everybody was evil and he started thinking about the flood? Like, did he start? It just came up as an idea, and then he thought, "Oh well, I could kill them all," you know. And it's like, what exactly is that process in a timeless, spaceless being? I don't know.
I'm asking because modern thinking tends to reduce things to their basic components, which kills the thing in the process. If everything's just quarks, there's nothing. Well, no, that's why I use the stable pattern. Because you could break this down. You could have a ship of Theseus problem, but I don't necessarily view this as a collection of things that makes the thing. I consider this a stable relational network. That's all.
I love stable pattern. That's a cool way to view it. Yeah.
To bring it back to fine tuning, like
I disagree.
Oh, I'm sorry, Robert.
What, Robert?
Because a dance is a thing, but it's not a stable pattern. It's a moving pattern.
I think it was you, Felicia, who were talking earlier. Like, what do they imagine was actually happening when the universe is being fine-tuned? Because is there like a God who's like a mad scientist in the laboratory? He's like, now I need to add this, and I'm going to turn this dial here and that dial there. Like, is that really? Because that's not like the classic theist God who's like messing around to try to get a goal, right? So in what sense then would he even take action to create the fine tuning? And the way I think about it is like, when I want to move my arm, all kinds of things happen that I can't even control, that happen just by the nature of who I am, that I have no knowledge of and have no direct interface with. I just think I want to move my arm, and then my arm moves. If God is like that, then in what sense is there fine tuning?
Boy, if God is like that, in one sense, is there fine tuning? So a Christian would push back and say, well, God isn't like that, obviously. But then is there actually fine tuning? Is it just
I mean, that's how my mind works. So if we're going to use the word mind,
Yeah.
well, so the way my mind works, God doesn't speak to me, and so therefore God doesn't exist. Because if God
right.
if
But what
God
I mean
knows
is,
if God knows how to speak to everybody, if God wants to have a relationship with everyone, he should be able to speak to me as a senior software engineer of 20 plus years. He should be able to tell me, like, here's the manual, here's the instructions, here's the C++ code. Go, have fun, find me. And he
but it
doesn't.
gets back to the Star Trek 5, right? What does God need with a starship? Why would God need to talk to me? Right? Like that, all of that just makes no sense. If the word mind has a meaning of mind, and we know what human minds are like because human minds have goals and desires, for what possible reason would we think that this perfect being would have goals and desires that we have access to, or would like design things in the way that we design things? Most likely it would just be a natural.
Getting back to the Star Trek thing, why would God need fine tuning? Why does God need anything like that when he's God, when he can just overrule all patterns and all rules and just make it so?
And on theism, or at least on the standard like Islam, Judaism, and Christianity theism, he made immaterial creatures who are not made of matter, who are capable of making free will choices and capable of worshiping him and capable of falling. So like the existence of the universe is actually nonsense on that argument.
Yeah, there's I've had an argument for a long time now that the end results of all arguments are, why did God create anything as temporal? Why is time happening? And the reason that I mention that is because if God has an end result that he wants, whether he wants a church or wants a specific group, why not just create that end result? Why not just go straight to it? There's no reason to go through a systemic process of arriving. I don't know if you've ever heard at like last Thursdayism, this whole idea, or if you've ever heard it, the whole idea that the whole universe just started last Thursday and that everything's preloaded with memory and all. Similar to this, like people in religions think that this is all a cultivation process, that we're all being cultivated and formed, and there's this apokatastasis or something that is bringing us to a closer relationship, and then that's going to be taken. But if God is all powerful, why could he not just create everybody in the final state? It doesn't make any sense that you would even go through the process.
So weird. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Either the universe it can do something that God can't, and God has to let it go through the process of the universe to refine it, or God's just not all powerful. That would mean that the universe can do something that God can.
And I just want to say,
it's so weird.
I just want to say here, if especially to any Christians that might be listening in, if we're questioning God in your mind and you think that's inappropriate, your God is more than welcome to
show up,
join us, to hit the link, and then just chew us out and ask us where we were when he did all this, and why do we think we're so smart and strong? And he's really invited to come here and set us straight on all our ideas. I'm going to wait a few seconds and give him a chance to click that link.
So, Robert, if I could, Robert, I just want to say on the cultivation thing, it's really interesting that you say that, because to go back to the procedural generation thing, it really sounds like God's just playing a farming simulator, and it's really weird. And why would he do that?
Yeah,
that's kind of the Buddhist idea, is that God is basically this super being and bored as hell, and just creates this universe and then immerses himself in the universe and forgets that he's playing the game, basically. So like sometimes when you immerse yourself in a game, it's so serious that you don't even know you're playing the game. You forget that you're playing. And that's the Buddhist idea. And then when you have what's called enlightenment, all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I'm not some individual. This is the universe. I am God. I am God playing at being the universe, which is kind of a beautiful little story. So anyway.
Yeah, it seems like such a simple question though to ask a theist though. Like, is there an end result in mind? Does God have an end result in mind? And I think there's almost no theist that would say anything other than yes, God has an end result in mind. Like this project is going to wrap up at some point, that it's all for some reason, right? And if as soon as you make that proclamation that it's all for some reason, then you're left with the problem of why not then just create that state? Why not just create that state? Why go through all of this? It doesn't make any sense. So you either have to admit that God can't, that he's just not capable of creating the end result, or something else is going on.
I want to, can I call out somebody in the chat here? Is that all right? So Stitch says hydrogen, an odorless, colorless gas, if given enough time, becomes a human. That is a reductive straw man of emergentism, and a massive appeal to your own personal incredulity, because that's not an argument. That is the cartoon version of emergence. That's like saying sand becomes a computer and pretending you've refuted microchips, right? Like,
right. It could be sarcasm, though. I don't know this particular one, because it's not one I'm familiar with, though. They may very well not be sarcasm. This is
raises the question:
a misrepresented straw man.
Are there threads like on Reddit or even on YouTube where they're trying to refute microchips? Is that a thing on the internet? Because
I have seen. I have. All right. So there's a conspiracy theory website called. I don't want to say it because it is a giant MAGA hub, and they have done violent things before, so I won't say it. But there is a conspiracy theory forum. It's very big, very popular. They do challenge the notion that microchips are actually a thing we construct and not something that's actually given to us by aliens. I'm not joking.
No.
So that's
what I mean by cult.
They obviously never used a Windows 3.1 machine back in the day.
3.1. Windows 3.1. Work groups. That's what I started on.
Hey, you know what, guys? I was introduced to Windows. I was at the conference where Windows was introduced to the world in Seattle.
Back in 95 or
no, it was 81, 82. It was Windows. I have a manual in my library that's Windows Alpha version.
Oh, that's awesome.
Not the beta version. It's Alpha version, I think 1.0 or something like that. Dude. And so I was with Windows from the very beginning.
That is awesome. That is
Bill Gates was out there running from hospitality suite to hospitality suite, madly typing on computers, and he was testing everybody's graphics card, and it was awesome. It was something else.
Do you think a lot of these conspiracies are basically fueled by the breakdown of our public education system, to where people don't have the basic knowledge to even begin to comprehend circuits, integrated circuits, electronics?
Yes, absolutely. Jim Bob was on the stream just this week talking about how carbon dating can't prove the age of the Earth. Like, literally no person who knows anything about carbon dating thinks it has anything to do with the age of the Earth. And Jim Bob has done 10 evolution debates, and he still doesn't know this?
Well, Kurt,
he doesn't believe in the atmosphere.
I think Jim Bob's a grifter, so.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he doesn't believe in the atmosphere because he says that, because there's a vacuum in space, that the atmosphere would blow into the vacuum, right? It would launch itself into the vacuum.
That's a Flurfer argument.
Well, that's a Flurfer argument. I was just going to say that. That's exactly what it is.
So what's more concerning is that not only do people like Jim Bob make these arguments, but what's more concerning, and this is where I think the lack of solid education comes from, causes, I should say, is that people listen to him and take the argument seriously. They're not doing any critical thinking.
They think he's knowledgeable. There was a debate I saw. A guy was debating flying spaghetti auditor. I think his name was Shaman Omar or something. And he was arguing that when you burn wood, the wood turns into energy and disappears and the matter goes away. And I'm like, no. There's a tiny niche point at which matter can be turned into energy, and that's in nuclear reactions, and that's it. That's the only time that matter ever converts into energy. Other than that, matter just stays matter, and it just gets redistributed. He has no knowledge of chemistry at all, and he's
that would be so convenient That'd be so convenient for murderers if you could just get rid of the entire body, you know? Just
Yeah, right.
just turn it into energy and send it off. You know?
No, but it's like these people just don't know like the basic facts of how things are constructed or what chemistry is or how physics works.
Yeah. So he doesn't know how gravity works, for God's sake. You know, and then he's coming up with all this straw man BS about evolution. It drives me crazy, really.
Scott is talking my language. We've had the conversations about the Commodore 64, which is where I got my start. He got his start on the TRS-80, the Tandy.
Oh, Scott, I had a TRS-80.
Oh, you are speaking my language.
See,
I was building
nerds. I had a pogo ball and a basketball.
My mom didn't see any usefulness in me getting a computer. Plus, I guess they were expensive at the time. So that was from my 10th grade geometry teacher had one and would let the class take turns on it. And then I borrowed a friend's Commodore 64 one weekend, I think.
Oh, the Commodore!
And then just had to just kind of steal little moments with computers from there.
Guys,
for all you youngins out there, TRS in the TRS-80 stood for the Radio Shack. You would buy it at Radio Shack.
Radio Shack was the place to get computers for a little while.
Guys, can I raise a concern?
Instruments, wasn't it? TRS-80?
Yeah, Texas Instruments.
It was made by Radio Shack.
Okay.
TRS-80? No, I think it was TI. I think it was TI.
Oh no, TRS-80 was Texas Instruments. I mistakenly said Tandy. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I was.
It might have been made by TI, but it was sold through.
Yeah, it was sold through Radio Shack. Yeah. It was sold through Radio Shack, 100%.
I was soldering together Apple II computers and 8080 computers, IMSI 8080, in my apartment for the opening of the second computer store in Minneapolis.
That wasn't good for your health.
Guys, can I raise a demographics problem here? I think we're really old.
Yeah, really old.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm just joking, guys.
In fact, I need to go take my medicine.
So, what programming language are you currently working in, Felicia?
Which one am I not working in is the better question.
Which one are you not working in? Okay.
Yeah, so right now my primary at work is currently a combination of Node, Python. I'm doing some C, and in my spare time I'm doing C, C++, Python. And I have some 16-bit DOS assembly work. I'm disassembling an old DOS game called The Shadow of Eusebius. I'm trying to reverse engineer the encryption on it so I can reverse engineer the character save files.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, doing
bunch of stuff. I worked at Ruby on Rails and React and iPhone development, and came up on Pascal and then C and assembly language basically. But my favorite is Ruby and Python. Those are wonderful languages.
I wish Python was easier to package in an executable for the average person, but other than that, I love Python. Yeah. It's a great language.
Yeah, I'm using it in bioinformatics now, and it's absolutely wonderful for that.
I did some toying around in R as well, but big data is not really my thing. My experience is with live streaming, so I worked in like Wowza and stuff like that. I didn't work at Wowza, I worked with the program Wowza. Just to be clear, stuff like that. So, I mean, software engineering is a fascinating industry. It's changing rapidly right now with AI.
Oh yes,
but
AI.
Like, I don't necessarily mind that. I don't necessarily find that to be all that bad as long as you know how to structure projects and you own the code and you review it and you understand what the code's doing. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I mean.
Yeah.
Now there are other aspects of AI I have issues with. I have issues with, the art aspect of it, things like that. But it did something both beautiful and hurtful for me at the same time. AI. I uploaded the last video clip, the only recording of my father's voice that I have. I uploaded that to Vox CPM, which is a local AI inference to infer vocal, and I got to hear my dad speak again. After 15 years of him being dead. And I was like, wow. I both loved it and I fucking hated it.
Yeah.
I loved hearing his voice again, and I almost started sobbing, man. That was so
Yeah.
hard to hear. But to be able to do something like that is incredible, to
Yeah.
be able to bring back a loved one, and you're just like, wow, that's almost exactly what I remember him sounding like. You
Yeah.
can't get that out of a photograph or anything, that's
Yeah.
kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is.
it's a new qualia. It really is. I can't imagine when we first started getting color photographs and high resolution, when people could look at color photographs and we're like, wow, it's very
Yeah.
different. It feels more real,
Mhm.
It feels like the person. There's a capturing of the person, and this is now a new level of a capturing of the person.
Yeah.
And really, that's kind of what we're doing. We're trying to preserve ourselves, and I think ultimately, that's what it comes down to. What technology comes down to is just us trying to preserve ourselves. That's it.
Cool. Hey, Loki.
Kitty cat.
Loki's stopping in. Say something, Loki.
We're getting
Yeah.
towards the end of all this. So we got a few minutes. We're fixing to be wrapping it up. If y'all got any questions, please put them in the chat. We're going to do a around the house kind of wrap up with Felicia being the last. Mike, you're from Answers in Atheism. I think I have a link on you here. I'm going to put you over here on the side chat. What are the things that you discuss and mess with on your channel?
I guess atheism in molecular biology and evolution and pushback against creationism. And I'm currently, we haven't done a whole lot. Scott and I are lazy. So, but I keep wanting to do something because I have all of this information about evolution that I don't think people are getting. And I would kind of like to put some of it forth. So I'm hoping to do a little bit of that. And then the other thing is the project of naturalizing epistemology and spiritualizing atheism. Maybe that's kind of what the name Answers in Atheism
Don't
is
tell
about.
Matt Dillahunty that.
I know. Well, screw Matt Dillahunty. He's kind of a I'm not going to get into that anyway. So that's what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to do some damn content someday and actually put forth, because I'm learning all of this stuff about evolution, and it is so slam dunk evolution when you see it. When you understand what's really going on at the molecular level and in embryology, evolution is just such a wonderful story, and it is so absolutely true.
So don't let Rebecca say it's
I
just
know.
a story.
Yeah.
It's just a story.
I'm in a cult. Well, actually, I'm getting paid to say that by the academia.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. That's it.
Excellent. All right. Appreciate it, Mike. We're going to do a question right quick from the crowd here. The fine-tuning argument, just take away what we see in the basic level and apply it to the larger scale of the cosmos. Why do you think it's silly?
I think
we understand the first context, but
I think it's silly because it offers no unique insight into anything. It just says that the constants of scientific models and the parameters of scientific models are a certain way. We've measured them to be a certain way. Let's posit a reason for them to be this way. And that's not necessarily leading you to a God. It's not necessarily leading you to any sort of real scientific answer. When you look at fine tuning from a scientific perspective, it's maybe our models are incomplete. Maybe there's something a little bit more fundamental we're missing. For example, gravity. Like there's definitely a missing link between quantum mechanics and gravity that, there's various theories, string theory, loop quantum gravity, things like that. I'm sorry, not theories, hypotheses, conjectures. So, when you make the fine tuning argument, to me, you're making a very specific form of anti-scientific argument. And to me, that's silly.
Yeah, I would say like we have an n equals 1. And to make any kind of inferential, inductive claim or argument from best explanation, you have to have a reference class with an n equal 1 like instance, right? Otherwise, you just have an n equal 1, which whether you think it's a brute fact or you think it comes from an infinite regress or you think it comes from a necessary case, You don't know, so all you're doing is giving me what's inside your particular vibe. You're not telling me anything about what's out there in reality. When we have an n equal 1, all we can say is this is this one. I liken it to you have a silo behind you and you pull out one green M&M. What does that tell you? It tells you there was one green M&M in that silo. That's all you know. You don't know anything else about everything else that's in there. You just know you got one green M&M from that silo.
Now, I want to make sure I've got this straight too. There is the fine-tuning argument of apologists, and then there's just the concept of fine-tuning in cosmology.
In science, overall, because science, we look at our models in science and we say, oh, these constants are fine-tuned, but they're fine-tuned because we've done experiments to determine their values. So we've fine-tuned to those values.
Yep.
Okay, so it's about degrees of what is it, like with the decimal points and all that, of significance, or
it's.
Well, there's another little issue in there, because between any 2 points on a number line, there's an infinite number of divisible points among them. So the fine tuning may not even be like it's not even necessarily, it's not demonstrated at all to me.
Right. That's perfectly said. And no one brings that up enough, that it is infinitely divisible. It's like at the local scale you mention all the time. We say when something's fine-tuned, it's fine-tuned at this local scale that means something sufficient to us. But every one of these numbers at every decimal point, it is infinitely divisible beyond that. And where do we say that this wouldn't lead to something like the life that we have presently?
I think what I was trying to say was significant digits. There was a big deal about, what really counts. Like if you have a device that is accurate to 3 decimal points and a device that's accurate to 5 decimal points. Well, those last 2 decimal points aren't significant. They don't mean anything because you're limited by the device that only has 3 decimal points of accuracy. And what I was thinking was, well, maybe, fine tuning just means we found a number that goes out a certain length of precision or decimal point, and we can go no further.
Yeah,
sure.
How about that,
Scott? The pi is fine-tuned out to the decimal that you want to stop at.
How about this argument? We tried to fine-tune the Hubble constant, and we find a larger and larger discrepancy. That now it's not a Hubble constant anymore; it's a Hubble tension. There you go.
We're going to try to keep wrapping this up.
We're the ones doing the tuning.
Kurt, the whole time, our fingerprints on everything.
All right, well, Mike or Scott, I'm sorry. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. Scott, if y'all don't know Scott, I don't think you have a channel, but you're found just about everywhere. You're over.
Yeah, I don't have I have a channel, but that's just for private stuff. And basically, my job is to come onto panels and make smart alecky comments.
Well, you're crushing it at that. You've been doing it for a few years now. You've been crushing it at that. I think you're over every Saturday. You're a panelist on the not Answers in Atheism. Sometimes over there, but what's
SNATA?
SNATA, yeah. Saturday Night Live at the Atheist is where you're primarily found, and then over with Mike, if I'm not mistaken, from Answers in Atheism.
Yeah, whenever he decides to pull his nose out of a book and actually do a video, I'll be there.
Fantastic. All right. Excellent. Any last words then, man? And I'm going to let Kurt go.
Sorry, was that to me?
Scott, no, Scott.
No, I have no last words.
All right, man. I'm gonna pull you off the stage, and everybody's welcome to come back after it whenever I close it down. But I'm just gonna pull you off right now. Kurt, you got a Substack, right? And I'm gonna put the link in the description there. You do a bit of writing. What's the subjects that you've been doing?
This last week or so, probably a couple of weeks, I've been dealing with the comparative theological framework from Tavo Sanabri. It's refreshing in that it's a Christian apologist who's making an evidence-based case, which seems to be out of fashion right now. But it's also not great evidence, in my opinion. So I'm just interacting with the various arguments.
Excellent.
And then I just find it hilarious that English is such a screwed up language. He said, I like to make smart alecky comments. And I realized that, but the person making the smart alecky comments isn't a smart ass. They're a wise ass. It should be a smart ass, but no, a smart ass is like somebody who's mouthing off to someone, whereas a wise ass is who's making smart alecky comments. We have a screwed up language.
That'll happen. But that's Kurt. Check him out. There's a Substack posted on the side that you'll see the chat. And Kurt, I'm gonna pull you off the stage, and if you stick around, then I'll chat with you later. But I'm gonna bring you off stage. Appreciate it, man. And finally, Felicia, y'all can check Felicia out. I'm going to put her link in the description. It's also pinned in the, she's been our main guest today. I appreciate you for coming on. And
thank you for having me.
That you've picked. Anything that you got going on presently?
I'm going to be posting, try to be posting videos again on the channel, but I'm going to be posting mostly about the relational atheism concept, because I've just the arguments about theism. Okay, whatever. But yeah, so I'll be posting about that, and I'll be bringing back Secular Sunrise soon. Not this week, but hopefully next week. I'm working on a new concept for my morning show, and hopefully it'll be a little bit more organized, a little bit more coherent, and a little bit more informative and more fulfilling for people. So
yeah, Ed was asking about that earlier when you're bringing back the morning show, so that's great. I think there's a few people that are waiting for that. But y'all check Felicia out. Her information and links posted in the description. As always, I encourage everyone to remain skeptical and remain skeptical about your skepticism. With that said, thank you and have a nice day. Y'all take care.